let me start doing this then. Okay, so yeah, so what we can do is, I say, that's what I tend to do with my Northern Lights videos and stuff like that, is have like a slideshow that transitions, and then that way, if you are at slightly different angles and stuff like that, it's not abrupt. Obviously, if you've got a time lapse and you were physically doing a time lapse and you change position halfway through, there'd be a big jump, which would kind of look a bit odd. So yeah, that's something we can have a look at as well. Probably do that through Lightroom. Did you go onto a Mac, Helen? No. Or are you still on PC? Oh, good. If you're still on PC, I will show you how to do it in Picasa. If you can still get Picasa to work. If you can,
I don't have it downloaded anymore.
I can get you a copy of it. That's not a problem.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I can get you a copy of it, because I've got to tell you, Picasa still does the best kind of fade through on the videos, and it works really brilliantly. There's a setting that you can kind of do in there. Basically, it's like a 1 second time lapse with a 1 second dissolve, and it just dissolves beautifully through from one. In fact, I'll show you. There you go. Let's share screen off the bat. Actually, let me show you this, and I'll show you a video that I did using it. Oh, hang on a minute. I haven't got the video here. Right. Okay, I need to find that then. Let me just stop a second. Just stop that share a second. Let's have a quick peek. Well, actually, it's that one will do. There you go, that one will do. Right, let me just share this. Share screen one. Okay. So this was done using that very technique. Right, so that was 1 minute 42. Now, that might not sound long, but if I tell you that each second of video takes 24 or 25 shots, then you could, that is about 100. So that's about 100 times 25. So 2,500 seconds, in other words. Wow. Now, but there is nowhere near 2,500 worth of seconds. I don't know if somebody wants to do some quick maths for me. What's about 2,500 seconds in hours?
Oh, 2,500 seconds. What's 60 seconds in a
minute?
In a minute. 3,600 in an hour.
So yeah. So it's about 45 seconds. So about 45 minutes. That was probably about, each segment was probably about 20 or 30 shots, because each one would have been about 15-20 second exposure. And so what we're doing is, by using that Picasa, and basically what you're doing is you're doing a slideshow with a slow transition through each slide, and it gives you that nice sort of gentle thing. So that's what I'm saying, really, Helen, that would sort of solve your jerkiness, because even if you move position slightly, because if you videoed it and you move position, it would go thump,
Yeah.
and it would look awful. But if you just transition through, then you'll get away with it.
So that was all stills.
They were all stills, yeah.
Oh, because I genuinely thought that was 4 videos you just linked together.
No. That was basically 4 slideshows.
Yeah.
I won't even say it is a time lapse, but it's basically 4 slideshows joined together.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. But what makes it work is the transition speed between each slideshow. So that's basically okay. That's useful then. So yeah, I'll run you through how to do that as well. See how we go for time. Either do it this week or next week for you. Yeah. So yes, so go off and dig out anything you've got. But obviously, if you can be in the same position, it's going to look better because you haven't got things changing all over.
No, I could certainly do it from now to the end of the build, but obviously I've missed some of the beginning of it because there's too much stuff in the way.
Yeah. So this is a brand new house, is it?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, did you buy the land and then have the house?
We bought the land, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just bad timing, really, isn't it? Because we bought the land and then everything's kind of just gone up in price since then. So it's just mad. Every quote you get is just you can have the quote for about a fortnight and then it's the price of wood's gone up or the price of concrete's gone up or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting in that mind you think you know what you want. You think, I can build my house, I can design what I want, but amazingly it's not quite that straightforward. You don't really know what you want.
And the trouble is, of course, you're going to constantly upgrade, aren't you? Because at some stage they're going to say, we can do it for this, but if you want this extra luxury bath or this extra Dubry, you're going to go, it's only another grand, we'll do that.
Well, and everybody says that to you. Everybody says to you, well, for another few £100 you can do this. That's what everybody says, and you just say, yeah, right.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, like I say, I like to watch the programs with George and people like that, and 9 times out of 10, what's your budget? 25k, and for an extension or something. And how much did you spend? 75. And then you get some people that go and spend like, what was your budget? X. How much extra did you spend? $250,000. What? Where'd you get the money from? Yeah. Amazing.
But the trouble is, you get stuck because you already started the project. You're already, it's you have to carry on.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So
I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. Well, so where are you living at the moment then?
I'm in Nuneaton at the moment.
But, so you've got a house, obviously, at the minute.
Yeah, we're still in our home at the moment. And this is in a little village called Ostry, which is just near Twycross Zoo.
Oh, fab! Yeah, that sounds brilliant.
Excuse me. A little bit more rural, which is good. Yeah.
I'll be able to go out and do some astro then.
Well, actually, it's quite good. There's some really good like ridges up there, and you can see for miles. So yeah, definitely. I need to get Dave doing it though. I don't really fancy standing in a field on my own.
No,
that's the only trouble.
Does Dave still do some photography?
Very little.
Because he did. I know he did the course.
He did a couple of courses with you, and then like generally if we're on holiday or something, he's really good. He'll come out with me all times of the night and the morning, but the rest of the time he just doesn't get the time.
Yeah,
but I think he'll come back to it. I do.
Good. Oh yeah, people do. Right then, guys. So okay, then let's talk about time lapse then. So what I've got actually, let me pop this on the chat. I will send this over to you now because it's just a few notes I've jotted down. I'm going to go through them anyway. It's just a few notes I've jotted down. I'll pop this on the chat for you. It comes up. There we go. Zoom Club, and where are we? Just drag that to there. There you go, and send you that. So I'm going to open it up anyway, so just so that you got it for reference. Right then, so time-lapse photography, right. So a couple of tips to get you started. You want a big memory card. You're going to be taking a lot. So what I'm assuming here is you're not doing a time lapse like Helen, where you're doing one picture every week or few days. I'm talking about here where we're doing a time lapse where you're going out, you're pointing your camera to landscape or something, and you are videoing it, recording it to do a time lapse. And obviously what you're going to tend to get is you're going to get a time lapse with things like nice moving clouds and stuff like that. So let me just share screen again, just show you the sort of thing that we're talking about. So I've got several, but let me just do this one for you. So here is the setup. Can you see the screen okay? Just check.
Yeah.
So here's the setup. So what I did was I wanted to get the clouds moving by, and I just did it from the back garden. The day I did this, I was dodging the rain. You'll see that the clouds are quite dark, and I was constantly waiting for it to rain. So what I did was I got my little bear and I shoved him on a stool, and I sort of got it so I could get the cloud here and got the camera down here. And this is the resulting picture. So this picture is on aperture priority at f16, 100 ISO, and it's a 6-second gap between each picture, and we'll show you how to do that. And then it's actually done. I've done this one at 30 frames a second. We're going to talk about interval. We're going to talk about putting it together, the frames per second. But let me just show you then. So this is one picture every 6 seconds. Okay, and this is how fast the clouds move. There we go. Let's just make it a little bit bigger for you. There we go.
Yeah.
So obviously it will depend on the day you've got. Let me show you that again. So this is actually only a 3-second video.
Yeah.
This took 10 minutes. So all the videos I did for 10 minutes worth of video, and that is basically, so 10 minutes worth of photography gets you 3 seconds worth of video. Yeah. So if you're thinking about, a video that's going to last maybe 20, 30 seconds, you can do the maths, and you've got to be out there quite a long time. Now, the longer between interval, the faster the clouds or whatever it is going to move. And I did some at 4 seconds, and I did some at longer, more time as well. So let's have a quick look at a couple more then. So just make it bigger so I can see what I'm doing. So we go to grid view. There we go. So this one was the 6-second one. Here's one. Oh, here's what happens if you try to slow that down. So what I did there, that was at kind of normal frame rate when you watch a movie back. So when a movie's made, it's normally made at around about between 24 and 30 seconds. So 30 frames per second. So for each second of time, there are between 24 and 30 frames a second. And now if you think, okay, well, I'll tell you what, and instead of doing that, why don't I just slow it down? Instead of doing 30 frames a second, why don't I just do sort of 5 or 8 frames a second? And the reason is this, you'll see. You see, it gets very jolty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a 13-second video. So that was slowed down. I think it was 400% slowed down. That one was. And then you can actually slow it down even more and turn it into a video. Now, if we go for a video, let's have a look what we've got here. This is things. Oh, this was again slowed down. What have we got here? How many seconds is this? Have a look at this one. So again, you can see that's quite jolty. It was slowed down, but this is it at normal speed. This again, now this is at 25 frames a second at 4-second interval. This is 10 minutes worth of photography. Lasts for 2 seconds. So hopefully that has given you an idea of how many frames you're going to have to take to get quite a lot. You know, to get yourself 10 seconds worth of video, you've got to do a lot. So first thing you're going to need to do is get yourself a large memory card, because you need 25 shots for every second of playback. Now you can use, this is what we're going to go through. We're going to go through setting your interval timer, or if you haven't got an interval timer, you can use an external timer. I'm pretty sure most of your cameras will have an interval timer.
Yes.
Now, you may also notice, and we'll have a look at this, you might have 2 options. You might have the option to go into the camera menu and create a time lapse, or go into the movie menu and create a time lapse.
Mhm.
The settings are very similar, but the difference is if you use the camera menu, each picture you take is going to be at the camera resolution.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So full resolution. If you use the movie method, the video is created in camera at video camera resolution. So whatever your camera records video at, in my case, it's 1920 by 1080, then that's how big your video files will be. And you can't edit them because what you get out is a video file.
Right.
So you can't really edit it very much. You can crop it and do stuff like that, but you can't really edit it much. Let me go through this. So I'll tell you what, okay, I'll do this next one then. And the one that confuses people, because it can seem illogical, is the interval between shots. People tend to think the interval between shots is when one shot finishes and the next one starts. That's what you think the interval is. It isn't. The interval is the time between the start of one shot and the time between the start of the next shot. So if you, just for sake of argument, if you had a 20-second interval and you did a 5-second exposure, the gap in between would be 15 seconds.
Mhm.
And you need to keep that in mind, because if you are doing a video, or sorry, a time lapse where it is getting darker, we tend to use something like aperture priority mode, or we have to increase the shutter speed. Obviously, we don't want to be changing aperture if we can help it, because you start changing aperture, you're going to be changing depth of field. So we tend to change shutter speed. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you've seen there how fast you need to do a video. A 6-second gap goes really quick. If you want slower clouds, you have to do a smaller gap. But you also need to leave a gap of at least a second between each frame for it to write to the card.
Mhm.
So the minimum kind of gap you can probably do is 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And if you were doing a time lapse at sunset and it was going to get quite dark, if it got to the point where the shutter speed was slower than, say, a second, 1.3, 1.4 seconds, 5, then you could have problems because it hasn't got time to write to the card.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you have to kind of keep that in mind. Okay. So with that, leave that. Let's go and grab cameras and let's have a look at your settings. So
Glenn, when you say you need a large card, what sort of size are you saying?
well, obviously it depends on how much you're going to do. But you're going to be, if you do the maths, you know, say for instance you're going to be doing a 16-second video is going to take in the region of 400. Well, around about 12-16-second video is going to take in the region of 400 pictures.
Yeah.
400 raw pictures. So if you wanted a 30-second video, you're looking at 1,200 pictures.
It's about 1,100 on the 64.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've only got a 16 gig card,
Yeah.
you could easily run out of space, particularly if you're shooting raw. And I recommend you shoot raw for these.
Yeah, I've only got mine of 32, I think. Yeah.
So when you're in there, it should tell you how many frames you've got left. On the top of your camera, it normally tells you how many frames you get. If you've got more than 1,000, it will say 999.
Right. Yeah, 589. Yeah.
Now it will take, if you've got camera with 2 cards, it will take into account both cards. So you might just want to just take out your JPEG card if you've got 2 slots. So if I put a 32 gigabyte card in, it says on my camera I get 428. That's about 16 seconds worth.
Yeah, mine says 412. Yeah.
Yeah. So about the same then.
So with the 2 slots, Glenn, if you set both of them up for raw, it would just keep going onto the other card.
You need to set it for raw overflow.
Yeah.
Raw overflow. Yeah.
Raw overflow, yeah, you can do that. So if you've got 2, so I would say you really need certainly bigger than a 16, preferably minimum, I would guess 32.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go into your camera menu, it's under the camera menu. In fact, let's go and find both of them, just see if you've got them both. If you look under the camera menu, it's usually sort of somewhere towards the end, and it says interval time of shooting.
Yep, got that.
Yeah. It's usually
Yeah.
one of the very last settings. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Got it, Helen?
Not yet. Oh, yeah, got it now.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, so that's that one. If you've got a video menu, so on my D7200 here, I've also got what call it movie shooting menu.
Yeah.
If you go in there and you womble down, you'll also get time-lapse photography, it says.
Yeah, got that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got that.
And if you just press enter and look in that menu, all the things that you'll see in there are pretty much the same as the things we're going to talk about under the camera settings. So it's the same stuff. The only difference is this one is created in camera movie. So what you could actually do is you could actually basically do your time lapse and then actually watch your movie on the back of your camera.
Yeah.
But you can't really do a lot to edit it. So everything I'm telling you, you can apply to both. So we're going to work with the one that says under the photo shooting menu, the camera menu.
Yeah.
Okay, so nip in there then.
Yep.
And oops, just set mine running accidentally. There we go. Okay, interval time of shooting. So you'll come down and you've got to choose. Let me just cancel out of this. Sorry, I was playing, I've set it. Let me just switch it off. Okay, right, here we go. So at the top, you've got start. It won't start, even if you press start, because you haven't set any intervals and timers and stuff like that, unless you've previously set them, in which case it will remember them. Next one is start options. On start options, you'll see that there's an arrow to the right to say that there's something else there. So you can either choose, which is what you will mostly choose, now, in which case it will start immediately that you press start, or you can choose start day and time, go to the right, and you'll see the date and the hours and the minutes. Now, that one is quite useful. I've used that one for my nighttime photography when I've done pictures of the Milky Way, because the Milky Way probably rises at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning. If I was to set the camera running when I went to bed, by 3 o'clock in the morning, the batteries would be flat. So what I do there is I take it to start at 3 o'clock, and then it records from 3 o'clock onwards. And then you might get 300-400 shots before the battery runs out. Okay. So that's your start time. So if you want it to start in the future, you can go and set a start time in there. It has to be at least 10 minutes hence. So you can't, it won't start now. You've got to give it a 10-minute kind of break, or the roundabouts that. Okay. Then you've got the interval. Now, as I said, the interval is the time between the start of one shot and the time between the start of the next shot. So it's not 1 second plus 4 seconds equals 5. It's 4 seconds minus 1 second equals 3 gap. All right. So you probably, the minimum you can do is 2 seconds. 2 seconds will give you quite a nice transition of the clouds, depending on how quick they're moving. Now, the day I did it, they were moving quite quickly. If they're just slow moving clouds, then you can have a longer gap. But remember this, the longer the gap you have, the longer it's going to take you to do a time lapse for every second of video. So if you have a 2 second gap and you want to do 30 frames, let's work on 30 frames a second, just for easy maths. If we say 30 frames a second, that means you've got to do, it's going to take you at least 60 shots to get 2 seconds worth of video. Yeah. So when you start adding it up, it starts to get quite a long time. Now, if you're unsure, you're better to shoot more shots than a bigger gap. Because if you shoot more shots, what you could actually do, say that you did it and you thought, that's a bit slow, I don't like that, I want to speed it up. You got two choices. You could either run it through and then speed it up, which you can do in the software, or you could just discard every second picture and effectively have a 4-second gap or a 6-second gap, whatever you wanted to do. So you're better to overshoot, because then at least you've got the flexibility to have a slow time lapse or a speed it up time lapse.
Yeah.
I know this is obvious, Glenn, but it is hours, minutes, seconds, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just checking.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because it was set at a minute, so that seems like a strange default.
Yes,
with
it
what
would be
you've
really,
just
wouldn't it?
said.
Yeah, interval, yeah, a minute, yeah. So it is. It's hours, minutes, seconds. So it's 4. At the moment, I've got mine set to 4 seconds because that was the last video I did. If the clouds are moving quickly, I would probably, looking at that video I've just showed you, I'd probably say go for 2 seconds because the clouds were moving quite quickly on those days.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you do 2 seconds, you're going to be able. You'll have you have more frames in your 10-minute. If you just did a 10-minute stint, but realistically, you're probably looking at shooting for an hour to get a decent length of video. Because if 10 minutes only gives you 2 seconds, an hour is going to give you 6 times 2, about 12 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think probably 12 seconds is a minimum length. Right, next one. So you press OK for that. Right, next one down says number of intervals times shots / intervals. That's what it says on the Nikons anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. What I suggest you doing there is the first number is how many pictures you're going to take times how many shots at each interval. So if it's the default is 1, it means you can take 1 picture every time it takes a picture. I can't see any reason to have that set to 2 or 3 unless you were being a bit clever and smarty pants and shooting HDR. In which case you would have to set your camera to bracket, and it would take 3 exposures at each shot at the bracket setting that your camera was at in the bracketing menu.
Yeah.
But unless you're being like a bit smarty pants, I don't think there's any need to do that. Plus, of course, you would have been taking 3 times as many pictures.
Yeah.
So now you need a minimum 64 gig card and possibly even more.
Yeah.
The editing for that. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
it's going to be bonkers.
Yeah.
And then you've got 4. You've got 4 things. Now I've got to tell you, you can go off and do the maths if you want, but much better. In that box, I just go and throw in 999. I just go and whack it right to the top, because the easiest thing to do is kind of, if you do your maths wrong, if you say, oh, I'll do 120, and then you do your maths wrong, and you come back in 2 hours' time thinking you've done 2 hours worth of photography, and you find out it's stopped, and you haven't, then you're going to be a bit annoyed. So just put it on the maximum, and then when you finish with it, just stop it. Work on the time rather than the number of shots.
Yeah.
So so the right-hand box is 1, but and then 999 in the first box.
That's correct. Yeah, in the first box it says 999. Oops. Okay. Yeah, number of shots. So the first box, you could say 9,999, whatever, but a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, many more than you think you want.
Yeah.
Then 1 is it will take 1 shot. So you can see there in this occasion it's going to take 9,999 shots. And if you went to where it says times 1 and you went to times 2, it would double that number.
Yeah.
But there's no reason, I can't see any reason to do that unless you're doing HDR. Right, now the next one is exposure smoothing. You want to have that on.
Excuse me.
What that does is, it's a bit clever. What it does is, if your light, so obviously what happens if you're doing a landscape, the clouds come over and the light changes. And what exposure smoothing does is it tries to minimize the jump between one exposure and the next. So instead of it, say the sun went in and the light dropped by 2 stops, it might do 1 stop differential to try and stop that huge, great jumping up and down of exposures. And it does work quite well.
Okay.
So put that on. Okay. And then what you should get then is you'll get a thing that underneath that, it tells you that like a summary. It
Yeah.
says when it's starting, you've got 9,999 times 1, and it'll tell you, sort of the timing and the sort of thing like that as well. But you need to do the maths to work out when it's likely to finish. It'd be nice if it told you when it was going to start and when it was going to finish as well, but it doesn't. And then all of those things we just said, if you went into the movie menu, they're all pretty much the same. But as I said before, you'll get a movie coming out as opposed to individual shots. And I think everybody was able to do that through their camera. So just in case folks watching it, I don't know if anybody's got a cable release as well, but it's pretty much the same. If for the folks watching, if you've got a cable release, then it's exactly the same thing, an interval timer. You'll have exactly the same controls. And the important thing, as I've said before, is to remember that the interval is the time between the start of one shot and the next shot, because a lot of people get it wrong and they tend to go, oh, a 2-second interval because they think they want a 2-second gap. And particularly if you're doing night photography and stuff like that, Ian, because what tends to happen there is obviously if you set in a 20-second exposure and then you do a 4-second gap, it ain't going to work.
No.
So you've got to do, and that if you are doing night photography, so if anybody decides to do that on night photography, then you might be doing 15-second exposures, and so you've got to remember to do at least a 17-second gap if you're doing 15-second exposures. And I'll show you such a video. I've done a few of these. So I'm sharing still. Okay, I'm still sharing. Let me just do this one for you, and then we'll. So there's one that's quite slow. You can see the stars kind of moving over there. We've got a better. Actually, I'll use this one. This is a bit better. There you go. There's the Milky Way. Yeah, moving across the sky. Quite interesting to watch the water move actually on that one. If you look at the water on that one, can I go full screen on these? There you go. Yeah. Play. On play. How do we play? No, that's interesting. You can't play a video from full screen. That's a bit of a pain, isn't it? You can do those. If I go Alt Tab, I might be able to make it go full. Can I? No. All right, I'll do it this way. I'll just show you. It won't go full screen. I think it normally does, but I think it's because of Zoom's on. And you see every now and again there was a bit of a flash where. Oh, actually, what is interesting as well is you can see the colour of the sky changing as the night goes on. Then every now and again there's a light flash on as well. So there's that one, and and this was one where I actually did this. So this was one where I set the timer to start at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, there you go. It's yeah. So this was one where I actually got the time to start. And the Milky Way is just rising. There's the Milky Way just rising there. Yeah. I hate that bloody cable. I'm going to go over there and disconnect his phone. Yeah. And then again, you can see the sky coming up. So that was one where I actually told it to start in the future and just did that from the bedroom window. Now, if you're doing those ones, they're actually in a way they're kind of easier because they are all done on manual exposure. Because one of the issues that we tend to have, and this is why you really need to shoot in RAW, is when the sun goes in and out, obviously there's changes. So if you shoot in manual exposure, every time the sun goes in, your picture goes darker. Every time the sun comes out, your picture goes brighter. So that means that you tend to shoot it in aperture priority, and then that will take into account that light going in and out. But even then, you can still get some flickering, because if there's a lot of white cloud in the picture, you're going to get a slightly different exposure than if it's all blue sky in the picture. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if you've got a super duper blue sky day and no clouds, you get a very even time lapse because there's no bright and dark, but it's also a bit boring because there's no clouds. Yeah. Right, let's stop share then. Right, stop share. Right, okay. So Any questions then about the settings, those settings?
No, no.
Right, good.
Well, Glenn, just on this,
Oh yes, you got on. Yep.
yeah. So it says delay, then it says long, then it says.
Oh yes, you got the
interval.
bonus on that one. So the delay is like the built-in one that said start in 10 minutes
Oh,
time
okay.
at a
Yeah.
time. So, but the delay, instead of giving you a time, because those timers, those interval timers don't have a clock in, or generally don't have a clock in.
No.
Whereas of course your camera's got the built-in clock.
Yeah.
And so the timer, rather than saying start at, I don't know, 8:20, it basically says start in 10 minutes.
Right.
So if you use in the scenario that I gave you about starting the Milky Way at 3 o'clock in the morning and you went to bed at 11, you would have to say start in 4 hours
4
time.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit nerve-wracking that, because you set it and you think to yourself, hope it's going to work, and you kind of go and set it for like 5 minutes and then watch it work, and then you set it and hopefully it'll work at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then is there anything else in that one, Helen? So you should have delay.
Well, it says delay, then long.
Yeah, so long is, I think that's the exposure time. How long is the next one? Interval.
Yeah, the next one's interval.
Yeah, the next one's yeah. So how long the exposure is. So these interval timers, they tend, so the interval, though, say you said 1 second and your camera was on B bulb,
Yeah.
it would give you a 1 second exposure. But if your camera was on aperture priority, then it would just give you the exposure that the aperture priority would give you, 2/50th of a second or something like that. Yeah. So you could set your delay, as long as your delay, your long is longer than your longest shutter speed will be, you'll be okay. And most of the time, and if you're just doing a sunset, your longest shutter speed is probably going to be 15th of a second, I would guess. Okay. Okay, so we said about aperture priority. Oh, so a couple of little tips that you can do is, so a couple of optional steps is, if you, what I recommend you do is have a brand new card, because that's going to make life easy. But it's also, if your camera's like my camera, I've got my camera to set to continuous numbering. So it's whatever it finishes up, the next time I take a frame, it gives the next number. It doesn't always reset to 1. I don't know if anybody's camera resets to 1.
No.
No.
So you know if it resets 1, because every time you look at your file number, it'll say DCS something 01 02 03 4. I don't like that, because obviously you're getting that same file name appearing in your file system all the time. But because the software might use your file name to put them in order, if you're at 998, it'll take 3 frames and then it'll go 001 and it's going to throw them out of order. So what you could do, you could kind of reset your counter so that when you're doing it, you know that that's the first frame, that's the second frame, that's the third frame. It's an optional thing. I tend not to bother, but if I suppose if I looked at it and it was close to 9999 or whatever it is, I might consider that. You also have the option if you want to, and again, you don't have to bother, because what we're going to do is we're going to load these into Lightroom, and if you have got other shots on that card, all I would do is I would put the other shots into a separate folder. And then I just have my time, because what you will need to do when I show you how to edit them, you only need time-lapse pictures in the folder. You can't have any other pictures in the folder. So one thing you can do, again, if you look at your menu, so let me give you a scenario this might be. Let's say you've been taking loads of pictures all day long, and then it's a nice sunset. You think, oh, I'll tell you what I'll do a time lapse of that. Then you need to have those in a separate folder. So what you could actually do is, in your camera menu, you can actually set a new folder. On the Nikons, it's this. You've got it's called storage folder. If you just go OK, you can say select folder from list, and if you've got separate folders, you can actually go in there and create a folder. Now, sometimes you can create a folder, it depends on your camera, or you can, you can create a new folder if you want to in that menu. Depends on which camera you've got. Some cameras do it, some cameras don't do it, but you can sometimes go and create a new folder. So there, my current folder is called 124. But if I want to, I can create a new folder and call it 125 or 126. So that's really only something that you probably need to worry about if you've got a lot of pictures already on there and you just want to be organized. It's not a massive issue because, as I say, if you just start shooting and you've got other pictures on the card, all we'll do is we'll just load the whole lot into Lightroom and then we'll just create a separate folder and put all our time-lapse pictures in. Okay. Okay, right, for simplicity, use aperture priority, so AE or AV, because that will look at the light changing. Now, if your light's pretty constant, like it would be in the evening if you did do stars, Milky Way or something like that, then you can use it on manual. And I would recommend that, in fact, you've got to use it on manual. If you're photographing the stars, you can't put your camera on aperture priority or anything else. You've got to do it on manual. So the important thing there, of course, is that thing about the interval. So if you take your test exposure and you say, right, I'm going to go with 15-second exposures, you've got to make sure that your interval is at least 17 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I would, by using RAW, if you do find that as you go through your pictures, there's a big jump between one frame and the next frame, you can nip in there and just go and correct that frame in RAW and hopefully get some changes. There is some software, I don't know if you've heard of it, there's some software called Lightroom Timelapse. No. There's a free trial of it, or you can buy it, and it's a bit clever. It's quite complicated to use, but what it actually does is it looks at the luminance value of each picture, and then it applies a minute adjustments to each frame so that they all have exactly the same luminance value, and it sort of stops it, what we call flicker. So sometimes where you get minor adjustments in each exposure, the picture can get brighter and darker very subtly. And it just reduces that flicker. Quite complicated to use. I mean, if it's something that you get into and you want me to run a thing on it, I'll run a lesson on it, but it's quite it is quite complicated. To use RAW, light's constant. Oh yes, so you also want to use manual exposure if you do use manual exposure for sort of if it's a total blue sky day or at night, but also you want to switch off autofocus and you want to set the white balance to whatever it is, sunny day, cloudy day, whatever it is. If you're doing your sunset, go and set it for cloudy. I know we can change it again in Lightroom, but again, what we don't want is the picture keep changing color because it's seeing lots of blue sky and then it sees lots of white clouds and you start to get these color flickers as well. And then if you're doing a sunset, you need to make sure that the longest shutter speed you get is longer than the interval. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's unlikely to be a problem because probably the latest slowest sunset I'm going to get is probably a 15th of a second. But here's a little tip for you for better time lapses. If you can shoot at slower shutter speeds, you get a smoother time lapse. Because what actually happens is if you've got a slow shutter speed, the cloud has got a slight bit of movement in it. And that slight bit of movement blends better into the next picture. If you use a fast shutter speed, then you get sharp cloud, sharp cloud, sharp cloud, and it can cause this kind of jittery effect. So of course, that's going to present the issue. Well, how do I get a slower shutter speed? Neutral density filters. So if you put your, and I tried this with the ND8 and the ND64, if you put the ND8 on and photograph a sunset at f16 and 100 ISO, you tend to get around about a 50th of a second. That's actually not too bad. 50th of a second is actually what they tend to record video footage in. So you can see by having the ND8 on, you get that. If you had the ND64 on, then you'd be getting 60th, 30th, around about 15th of a second. And that little bit of blurring things can just kind of blend them together better and you get nicer movement across the sky. So that's really more a case if you're doing cloud time lapses, like I was showing you. So to get a smoother cloud and avoid that, as you saw, that then pop a neutral density filter on.
Okay.
So you get slower
Mhm.
shutter speeds. But just make sure that you're not going to get shutter speeds that are longer than your 2-second interval, or
Mhm.
in fact, probably 1 second really, which you shouldn't do, I don't think. Does that make sense, Helen? So they're kind of, I mean, you can use those if you want to. They're bonus tips for a better time lapse.
Mhm.
They're bonus tips for a better time lapse. So if you whack your ND64 on, then you should be able to get nice shutter speeds. If you get shutter speeds between 60th of a second and 1 second, you'll should hopefully get nice smooth clouds moving across your frame.
Mhm.
150 shots will give you 6 seconds of video. Yeah. So basically divide number of shots by the slowest frame rate you can have for smooth video is probably 24 frames a second. So if I just work on sort of 30 frames a second for easier maths, if you do 150 shots, that's 6 seconds worth of video.
Mhm.
And there you go. That is it. Right. So let's show you how to edit them then. We've got time. Okay. So let me go back to Lightroom. All right. I'll tell you what, let's use that one of the, let's use this one. Okay. So let me share screen.
Share.
Okay, see Lightroom. So what we did was we took all the pictures into Lightroom in the normal way. Now what I started off with, I had one folder and I had 2 time lapses in that folder plus some other stuff in. So what I did was in here I had lots and lots of pictures. I then basically went to all those lots and lots of pictures. I clicked on a sequence, so the first one down to the last one. I'll just say it's sake of them for the sake of argument. And then I went to the folder, right click, create folder inside, and said include selected photos, and then gave that a name.
Mhm.
And the name I gave it was based on what it was. So it was aperture priority f16, 100 ISO, 6 seconds per image. So basically the settings that I used to create it were the folder name. And then I would have gone to the next lot of pictures in there and did exactly the same with those. So now I've just got a folder that's got that stuff in. Okay. Now, if you're going to do a video, generally speaking, if you're going to do a video, you're going to watch it on your TV. Your TV is a 16:9 ratio. So you need to go and crop them.
Mhm.
So what I recommend you do is go and do your edits. Now, I don't know if you've done this one before, but if you come into your library module and you press Control and A, which obviously select all, and Control and U, that will auto correct all of those pictures, just like pressing the auto button.
Mm. Yeah.
Then, with them all selected, dip into your develop module, switch on auto sync. So down here, you've got the sync button,
Mm-hmm.
switch on auto sync, and then go and make your adjustments. So bring up your shadows, bring down your highlights or whatever you want to do. Yeah. And then just have a quick look through them. Now, sometimes in Lightroom, it misses a picture. So what I recommend you do is go through each picture, and what you'll probably see is you'll see each picture change as you scroll through them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just go straight in and export them, I've had occasions where a couple of pictures haven't edited before they've exported, and obviously then you would get a square picture in the system. So yeah, so go in there and do that, and likewise when you do your crop, so R for the crop, go and choose ratio of 16:9, get it how framed how you want, and you see it says there crop updated for 145 images in this case, and you say done. I don't know if it'll do that thing that I suggest. it's working okay this time. Yeah, I've had it. You know, sometimes when you scroll through them, what you'll see is that you'll see one of the sort of take a second or two to resize or something like that. So just make sure you go through them all, so that they've all. In fact, there you go. There was one. See, get a duff one. So that there. So yeah. So that can sometimes happen. So go through each picture. Obviously, if you get one that's not worked, just go in there and tweak it, and then it's worked the next time. There you go. Okay, so now you've done them all. So next thing you need to do is you need to export them at a video resolution. So if you're going to watch them on a HD telly, they need to be exported at this file export. I won't reset module. So we can just go back to the library and we'll just go export. And you may already have one of these set, but if you haven't, I will run through the settings for you. 1920 edits. Now, if you did the course, it's the one I tend to use on the course. But if you haven't got one, I'll run you through the settings that you need to go through. So anybody wants to open Lightroom or write these down, or you can watch it back on the video. Yeah, so same folder as original photo. Put into subfolder 1920 edits, so and add to catalogue. Existing files ask what to do, so pretty much these are the same settings that you want to do. Custom text original file name, and I've just put HD in front for HD video. You can do HDV if it helps, if you want to, just to be honest, if you want to do that. And then in the width and height box, type 1920 by 1080. 1920 by 1080. Resolution doesn't really matter, but you can put 72 in there if you want. Sharpen for screen. Don't worry about metadata because it's on a video. And then at the end, I would choose Show in Explorer, and then that'll open it up and you can go and play it and just see it working. Okay. So that would be, and if you want to put your logo on, you could, but I wouldn't for this one. So then they all get exported and they go into a folder called 1920 edits. And what you need to do then, and in that folder, you must only have your edits. That's important. Because what we do next is we go and open Photoshop, and you will need to go and open Photoshop independently, rather than, you know, normally go right click edit in Photoshop. You will need to go and open Photoshop independently. Oh, everything gets slow when you everything running. Good. Okay. Let me just close this window just so I can show you how to open it again. Right. Okay. So obviously, because we open Photoshop independently, it's going to kind of come up without anything open. If it comes up with that big splash screen in the front, which I just find really annoying, just press escape and that should go away. Then you want to go to Window, Timeline. You get this box come down the bottom. Then you go, oh, and here's a little tip for Windows users. I don't think this works on the Mac. If it does, and somebody knows it works on the Mac, then let me know the system. If you go to the folder, what I can do in Windows, I can go to Show in Explorer. That will open the window with all of the pictures in. Then what I can do is I can click in the address bar at the top. I can go Control-C, copy the address. I don't know if you can do this on the Mac. Go back to Windows, go File, Open, and then instead of having to navigate through the file system to that folder, which is obviously what you would do, just highlight the bar, just go Control-V, and you can type in the address, and that will take you straight to the folder. I don't know if you can do that on the Mac. If you can copy address or anything.
I'll tell you in a second.
don't know if you can copy the address or not. If you can copy the address and paste the address, that's brilliant. I mean, you can get there because you just got to navigate to the folder, but it is a little quick tip to get you to a quick folder.
Hmm.
I don't think it's doable. I don't think, because I think I've asked it before. You might be able to find it under the properties or under info and copy the path from there.
You can copy the path name.
Yeah, and
You
then
can.
but then I don't know if you can paste that path name into
Just do
find it again. Yeah,
file open.
I find it a really useful little shortcut. Get
Yes.
the folders really quick. So now because these are in folders, that's fine. I don't need to worry about those. So all you need to do is click on the first picture. Your temptation here is to think, well, I want all of these pictures, go and click on them all. Do not do that. If you do that, it will open them all as individual pictures. You'll have 140 individual pictures opening up, and now halfway through it, you'll think, bugger. Just click on the very first picture, come down to this box that says image sequence. That is telling Photoshop that you are importing a time-lapse video. Then click on open. It then comes up and says, what frame rate do you want to use? Anything below 24, you will probably start to see flicker. You could probably go down to 20 if you really needed to stretch it. But basically, anything between 24, in fact, these are the default ones there, anything between 24 and 30, the higher the frame rate, the smoother the video. But the more pictures you've got to take for the same length of time. So if let's say we just go 25, then you can do that. Click OK. It'll think about it for a bit. And that basically is pretty much it. That is your video. Now, down here, you've got your controls. There's your playback button, the usual triangle. It will be jerky. Because if you just watch this, you see how long that takes, but I know that's only a 3-second video. So it takes longer to preview than it does to render it. And then you can stop it. And then you can press the arrow here, that goes back to the front. What you could also do here is if you did create 2 videos, is you could actually put both of those videos in, you could put both of those videos in the same folder, bring all the videos in, and what you can actually do is you can actually go into the video just here, and this symbol here, this, if your video is too long, you can actually cut it, but I wouldn't bother cutting it because I just put less videos, less frames in. But this sort of square with a cross through it is a crossfade, a transition. So if you do have 2 videos, you can drag the crossfade between the videos and they would blend in between the 2, dissolve from one to the other. So if you did have multiple videos, you could do that. So yeah, that's something you could do. So again, for yourself, Helen, say for instance, you've got the ones you've done now. Let's say from today, you can always put the camera in the same position. You could maybe do a crossfade between the first lot and then the second lot or something like that, so that you got a nice transition. Good. Once you've done that, or you can also go and add music. So you click on the track, you can say add audio. Obviously, if you add audio, now if you're just adding audio for your own purposes and you're only going to play it on your own telly, it's not a problem. But if you decide to upload it to YouTube and you use a track, a song, or anything like that, you'll get a copyright infringement, and they'll tell you off. So you need to kind of be aware of that. They've basically got automatic software that analyzes your audio and tells you if you've nicked something. But if you do go onto YouTube, YouTube has a library of copy-free music that you can use. If you want to do that, if you do a search that, you'll find it. So you can add audio track. Good. So once you've done that, you just need to export. And we go File and Export. Somewhere down here. So save as, where are we? There we go. Export. Halfway down, click on Export. And down at the bottom, it says render video. It says ... So we know that something else is going to come up. Thinks about it for a bit. There you go. Okay, so basically on this one, you can use pretty much all the defaults. They're absolutely fine. So if I call this Bear Sky or something like that, something I've not used before, select folder. This is the folder that it's going to go into. So if it's not already in the right folder, again, this is where you can use that technique. You can click, go in there, Control V, paste, and you can put it into a folder. I'll put it back into the output folder. Okay, select folder. Pretty much everything else is standard. These, don't mess around with these. You've got QuickTime and various things, but just use it on H.264. That's the one. You could change if you want a slightly smaller file. Then you can go and change the quality here from high quality. I think the default is high. You can go and change it down to medium quality. I wouldn't necessarily go down to low. And it should, if you haven't already, if you didn't crop them to 1920 by 1080 or whatever, you could actually do that here because it's down one of these things, 1080 and 1080p and stuff like that. But if you did it before, which I did, just choose document size and it'll just come through at the size of the document. Then you've got the frame rate, which we already set, and that's it really. So basically all you've really got to do in there is type a name in, choose which folder it's going into, and it's up to you, but you could choose medium quality and just save a slightly smaller file. And then click on render. And it's not too bad. Mind you, this is only 3 seconds, so. Gives you an idea how quick it goes. Probably go a bit quicker if I wasn't running everything else. And there we go. Oh, last bit. There you go. Video output. There it is. There. Is that the one? Actually, that's not the right one, is it? Where do we go to? Oh yeah, that's actually not the right one, but there you go. That's the gist of it. Not the same picture. Okay, good. So there you are. That is pretty much it. So that's how to set your camera, how to take the photographs, how to edit the photographs in Lightroom, how to export them at the right size, and how to put them into Photoshop as a timeline and export them as a video. If you've got a 4K telly, then you could actually send them out at 4K resolution, which I think is 3854 or something like that. You might have to look that up. But I think this is probably do the job for you. And then if you wanted to, you could upload it to YouTube and show all your friends your house being built. which I'm looking forward to seeing myself, actually.
Ooh, no pressure.
No pressure. Well, you've got to, I mean, you've got to do it, haven't you, really?
Yeah, well now I can actually get the camera in the same place then. Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Yeah. So let me quickly show you then before I go how to, let me close this down. Oh, when you're finished, you can just close it because you've created the video. So unless you want to come back and edit the video, which is not really an awful lot you can do to edit the video in Photoshop, all you can really do is if you right click, you can change the speed. So remember I said that if you did 2-second delay and you thought it was, you wanted to speed it up, you could actually come in here and change it to 200%. So it would be twice as quick, or 150%. If you start slowing it down, it's going to probably start to look a bit jerky. But it does give you a little bit of fine tuning. So basically, at this point, if you just close it, because you've already made your video, you can just close it. But if you think you might want to come back and re-edit it, then just click on save, and then you can come back and re-edit it if you wanted to. I tend not to bother because as far as I'm concerned, I've made it and it's just as quick to make it again. Do you want to save changes? No. Okay. So any questions then about all of that stuff that we've covered so far? Good, because it's your task for next week, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're going to get a house built in a week.
I mean, it'd be good for you, Ian, when you're doing your little models and stuff like
Well,
that.
it's funny you should say that.
Oh, here we go. You see.
I bought a little Lego set at the weekend.
So yeah. So
Specifically for this.
oh, fantastic! It'd be like you'd be like Wallace and Gromit. You'd be like Nick Parks. You'd be the new Nick Parks.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, camera in the same position if you possibly can.
Yeah.
Same light and everything. Good. Right. Let's see if we can do this thing then. I'll tell you how. I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me close Lightroom and just save myself a bit of memory. Okay, Picasso. I'll send you a link to this. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on the Mac anymore. So let me find those photos. Oh, this is also something that you might want to do in your. I've closed it. I keep all of my pictures in a folder in Lightroom called My Pictures. You might want to create a new folder called Timelines and keep all your timeline stuff in that folder. It just means that all of your time lapses are all in the same place. It just means instead of you wandering up and down your menus trying to find them in different folders, I just keep all my time lapses in one place. Right. So let me get a time lapse for you then. So let's just do this. Go to my time lapse folder. There we go. There's my time lapse folder. Okay. Video output. This will do. I'm not going to do loads of them. I'm just going to do one, two. Let's just do a few. Right. Let me find this. So what we're going to. So this is what you need to do in Picasso. Go and select the pictures that you want. Now, because what you're doing, let's say you take one picture every single week, 52 weeks. You've got 52 pictures. You'll probably start to do more pictures as it more stuff happens, or every. I don't know. Any thoughts when how often you're planning to do it, Ellen? Do you want like do it every day?
No, I'm not close enough. No, so a couple of times a week I go up.
A couple of times a week. Okay, yeah. So a couple of times a week. How long do you expect it to take?
Till July now. End of July.
Okay, end of July. Let's do some maths then. Okay, that is not going to be many pictures.
No, it's not.
So this method will work better for you, I think. Okay, so let's say, okay, what we got here? 1, 2, 3. I've got 6. That's 18 then to July. That's probably one a week. Yeah, it's probably about right-ish. Okay, so what you do is you go to Tools. Is it Tools or Create? No, sorry, Create Video from Selection. So you go and select all of your pictures. Then you've got to go to the Slide tab and give it a name. I'll do Bear Sky time lapse. You can go and change the fonts and all sorts of things like that. Okay, then you have got the next one is your clips. These are the actual clips that you've got. You can also go and load an audio track if you want to put some music to it. So if you go and find a track, you can go and add the track. Then this is the important one. This is where it's all done. You've got the resolution down here, 1920 by 1080, which we talked about before. And what you need to do here is for the transition, you need to choose dissolve, slide duration 1 second, slide overlap 1 second, and then create video. What this will do, okay, 15%. You can kind of say it's a time lapse, but it's kind of more of a slideshow with transitions, really. 35%, 37. $60, almost there. So what I chose 18. So if you think about it, if we did it the way that we did it through Photoshop at 24 frames a second, 18 is 3/4 of a second, which is obviously not very long. There we go. And there you go. So you see what kind of, that's what it's, see, so the clouds, it blends through. So if you imagine that was your building site thing, it would kind of blend through quite nicely. And then just play with that. That whole video is 19 seconds. So if you've only got 18 pictures, your video is going to last about 19, 20 seconds.
I'm going to have to go up a few more times, I think.
Yeah.
Especially as I'm away for 3 weeks in May.
Yeah. So the more you can do, the better it will be.
Yeah.
The more you can do, the better it will be.
I'm going to have to look back and see how many I've got, like front view on as well, see what I can put in. Yeah. So what I would do is just, then you can always go back here. If you're happy with what you've just seen, you just go here and you say export clip, and it will export it. There you go. It says save in movie, and that will just export it then as a MP4, I think it is. Yeah, and then obviously you can upload that to Facebook or send it to somebody if you want to. If you saw that and you thought it was a bit too quick, then just go into edit video and change the duration. So perhaps go for 2 seconds with a 1 second fade or something like that. And just play with those. But that's going to be a better way for you to do what you're doing. Yeah,
definitely. For the Mac people, the only way for you to do that, you would have to go into something like iMovie, and do it somewhere in there and choose a really slow frame rate, and you'd have to put dissolve in between each frame. I did try to do it in Photoshop, in Lightroom, but I couldn't get it to work in Lightroom. It was too jolty. There you go. So that's how to do it in Picasa. And what I'll do is I'll send you a link to Picasa so that you can have a go at that if you want to. Brilliant. Good stuff. There we are, guys. So plenty for you to play with there, and hope for the rest of the game. Yeah. Any questions?
I think I know how to do that path copy and paste in Mac if anybody wants.
Oh,
that.
okay, go on then, fire away. Do you want to tell me? Let me stop share if you, because I know there's a few Mac people out there now.
Okay, so
I find it really useful because it's a real bugger when you go and put something in the wrong folder and then you can't go and find it.
Yeah, so once you've copied the URL.
How do you copy the URL?
So that's right, hang on a second. So I pop.
You need to
You're not in C Finder, are you now?
I don't know. Well, it depends if you shared screen or you shared page.
I shared page, didn't I? Let me unshare. So you're sharing, stop share, beg your pardon. File share, share screen, desktop, that's what we want, share. Yep.
Okay, so if you press escape, that'll get rid of all that gunk, or should do.
That should be, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Don't need that anyway. So Finder. So just navigate to St. Pickies, Grimley Raceway. So I want to get to the Facebook edit.
Okay.
So I just want to copy the URL for that. So that option.
Oh.
Right click.
Okay.
Copy as path name.
Aha.
Yeah. And then in Photoshop, file open. Shift Command G.
All right. Okay.
Select. enter. Ta-da!
What does Shift Command G do?
That pastes the URL.
Okay.
So now
Okay.
I can go straight to my Facebook edit,
And then that can open up in there.
and then I can open them up.
Right. Why does it not say open? Why does it only say cancel?
I haven't picked a file.
Ah, okay. So that would be the
Yeah.
first file in that folder. And then
Yeah.
you, oh, so somewhere there, you would
I
need to
hadn't
obviously
only-
click on sequence, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so I'm clicking on the files now.
There,
so I
there
can
it is,
choose-
yeah. There's so that you've clicked on that. And then
Yeah.
do you see there at the bottom it says image sequence?
Yes,
So obviously if you did do a time lapse, that's what you would click on.
click on there as well.
And you can do that. So
Yeah. So it is there. It's just a little bit. It's not as intuitive as a Windows computer.
okay. So I mean you probably might find it quicker and easy just to navigate to it. But so
probably
yeah.
does,
So
yeah,
what
quicker.
was that shortcut then? So Command G, no Command
So to copy the URL,
Option.
Option right click, copy URL.
You copy path, yeah.
Yeah, and then to actually paste it, Shift Command G.
Right, Shift Command G. Okay, there you go, Chris. Hopefully you
Yeah.
remember all that.
I gotta watch the video again, yeah.
Yeah. So
There we go. So useful sort of little
Yeah.
thing.
Shift Command G. There you
Shift
go.
Command G. Fantastic, guys. Okay, so I look forward to seeing your time lapses next week. So yeah, so interested to see what you come up with, especially if you do your little model thing there, Ian. That could be kind of interesting. You could build a house. Actually, there you go, Alan. You could build a house out of Lego. Only it was that easy.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing it when it's done. Crikey.
Okey-dokey.
And a whole. Who designed it, by the way? Helen.
My house.
Yeah.
Well, it is an architect designed.
Oh.
It was actually, the plot was sold with an architect's design on it, and then all we've done is alter that so that it's to our liking.
Right. Is it a bit trendy then?
Is it trendy?
Oh, looking
It's
forward
not
to this.
well, it's got big windows and stuff, which actually, if I was to build again, I wouldn't do half of the things the architect's done at all.
Okay.
The roof is too complex, the windows are too complex. Even like putting window dressings up inside is going to be a nightmare. It's not, you just, the builder keeps saying to me, when you do your next one, and I keep saying, yeah. But actually, I wouldn't do it the same way.
No.
Wouldn't do it the same way.
Did you see the one that, I don't know if you watched the one that Sarah Beanie did? She built a
Yes, I
bloody
did,
great
yeah.
mansion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was quite interesting. That was. Yeah, I must admit, a lot of these, I do watch George, and and
I think George is much more down to earth. Actually, I like his.
he is.
I
but
like
some of
his.
his stuff's all right. But some of the stuff that some of it, the other architects do, they're all a bit weird, aren't they? Some of them are.
Yeah, but
Like
the
you say,
problem with ours is that it's slightly inclined, so that the architect designed it so that there was a garage underneath the house, so effectively
okay.
a basement. And that's just, we in our innocence, we just went, yeah. There's nowhere else to put a garage, so we did it, and it's caused us no end of problems.
I'll
It's
bet.
below the water table. It's always
Yeah.
in. We've got to have a permanent pump in there, and
Oh,
it's
my
created
goodness.
that the house is now quite high up.
Yeah.
And so now we're having to go back to the council to get planning to get a ramp in there, because I can't get my parents to the front door at the moment because it's too many steps. So it's just a catalogue of things that
I must admit, I think this thing where the underground garagey type thing, we've actually got one in the village as well. There's one in the village, and they've got exactly the same. They park their car on the drive.
Yeah,
When
it's got a
when snowing and ice,
permanent.
they can't get in and out.
It's got a permanent pump on it, and it's drying now, but obviously that's because the rest of the structure's there. But before, that was just wet the whole time, so it's taken a long time to dry out. But
Yes.
fingers crossed, it will stay dry because of the pump.
Yeah, let's hope your pump don't you get power cuts.
Don't even go there. No, not even thinking about that.
Not even thinking about that.
Right.
All right, guys. I'll see you next week. I say what I'll do is I will cancel your subscriptions at some stage. I'll see when everybody's forking out, but basically you probably end up paying. Obviously, you'll get your full month's worth whenever, but we'll look at sort of stopping around about July time, sort of when it runs out and stuff like that. Good, fantastic, folks. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Bye.
the challenge.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.